Welcome to the Wrestling So Called Podcast. My name's Cam. I'm talking with Tyler about Backlash, Wrestlemania Backlash 2021.
Hello.
Yeah. Um. So one of the things I don't really like about the name is I didn't understand the importance of putting WrestleMania in front of Backlash. Everyone knows what Backlash is. They could have just kept it the same, as they always have. But they taglined it with WrestleMania Backlash.
I think I'm doing that with every one of the pay-per-views. Because when I first noticed that, I'm like, why are they doing WrestleMania Backlash? It's been Backlash since, what, 99?
Something like that. And my whole thing is like, and I made this joke before one of the earlier episodes when they started really talking about the name of it, calling it WrestleMania. Is actually right after WrestleMania. They start calling it WrestleMania Backlash, and it's like one of those things. I'm like, are they just going to do this throughout the whole year? It's going to be WrestleMania Backlash, WrestleMania Hell in a Cell, WrestleMania TLC, WrestleMania Elimination Chamber, what have you.
WrestleMania SummerSlam.
WrestleMania SummerSlam, WrestleMania Royal Rumble. It's unnecessary, and it doesn't really change anything in terms of what the pay-per-view is. It's essentially a B-level pay-per-view. A-levels being more or less the Royal Rumbles, the WrestleManias, the SummerSlams, and the Survivor Series. Backlash has always been considered a B-level because they put less effort into it, and it's just hokey to have WrestleMania tagged to it and even have the same logo. And then it goes into another problem that WWE has with this current pay-per-view crop. They want to keep it where they have these gimmick pay-per-views, the TLCs, the Elimination Chambers, and the Hell in the Cells, and those just need to be scrapped. If there's a purpose to have this match in terms of the story, keep this going. But to have something called, Hell in a Cell, where we're gonna have like 3 Hell in a Cell matches, which really have no build behind it. In terms of like a feud, it makes no sense.
Yeah. The most recent Hell in a Cell match that I'm actually okay with was the Roman and Jay match from last year. Because at least it had a build.
Right.
So at least that match, in my opinion, did belong in Hell in a Cell. So,
I suspect they're probably going to put Roman in the Hell in the Cell this year against Jimmy Uso. But there's not enough build to it. They should have a couple matches by this point. The one with Jay did make sense. This one does not make sense. If whatever one they're probably going to do with Roman.
yeah.
Or any of them. So, like for instance, on the pay-per-view, you had the triple threat women's title match between women's Raw, and they have to have it branded. With Rhea Ripley and Asuka and Charlotte Flair. You had a triple threat there. The women's title is going to be involved in Hell in a Cell, but which one would you? There's no one that really fits the build for it. Rhea just became champion a few months ago at WrestleMania, or I'm sorry, not even a few months ago, 1 month ago at WrestleMania, defeating Asuka. Then you had Charlotte Flair interjecting herself into the women's title. The women's title picture, if you will. So if they're gonna have a Hell in a Cell match, there's no real blood feud for it, and that Hell in a Cell should be reserved for blood feuds.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what else they would do for that unless they do, which I don't even want to see, would be another triple threat, but inside the Hell in a Cell, like Punk, Cena, and Del Rio, and
It would only make sense if someone was interfering on one of their behalfs. That's the only time it would make sense to do that. Have someone, like I don't know who. Well, like what's her name? Asuka tag team with her, and I completely am blanking her name.
Kairi Sane.
Kairi Sane. Like if Kairi Sane interfered on Asuka's behalf, I could see doing Hell in a Cell at that point, because at the point you're blocking out the people from getting inside. That makes sense. But that hasn't happened. And even here, Rhea won and showed dominance by beating Asuka and Charlotte Flair, and moving forward and maintaining the belt. Which honestly, Rhea should. If you were to take the belt off for Rhea this soon, it kind of ruins the character as a complete whole, which WWE has done.
Yeah.
So it was the right choice to keep the belt on Rhea, but at this point, she defeated one of the two top Well, I mean, two of the top women that WWE has, especially on Raw.
Yeah, because there's not really any other competition on Raw for the belt because it seems to be in the women's tag team division.
Yeah, and honestly, the women's tag team division is kind of like taped together, if you will. The only one that's kind of a team that's been sticking around as a team has been Shayna Baszler and Nia. That kind of makes sense. Then you have over on SmackDown, you have oh, I am blanking on her name, Carmella and Naomi. And then you had Tamina and Natalia. So they have a little bit of taped together teams between both shows for the women's tag team. No, which is kind of funny. They got rid of the Iconics, and now they have no real
There's like no.
organic tag team.
I just realized that there's no like tag team, like, because ever since Kairi Sane's gone, they haven't had the Cookie Warriors. The Bella Twins are basically retired, and then they fired the Iconics.
Right, right. Which with the Iconics, I went back and forth with Mark. I do feel like the Iconics should end up in AEW. Him and I disagreed on it. He was more adamant that Mickey James should be a part of it, a part of AEW, which I can understand the perspective to have Mickey James there. I just don't think Mickey James is a good fit for AEW, in my opinion. In my opinion, she's on the upper area of age, which yes, I know Sting's there. Yes, I know Christian Cage is there and Big Show's there. But in terms of women, they need someone that can stick around and build off of. Mickey James has a little bit of name value, but I don't, in my opinion, just like with Christian Cage and even Big Show, I don't think they have many years left in the ring, maybe two max. And I think AEW should pick up someone that they could probably keep there for about 5 to 10 years. So, in my opinion, Mickey James should probably go to Impact, where she has a little bit of a following from her previous stint there, or even the National Wrestling Alliance, where her husband is. So, and I think the Iconics would probably be a good pick to put in the women's division in AEW. Way they can build a tag team, women's there, and also have a couple names that can help build the women in AEW, because they only really have um, Nyla Rose, Britt Baker, and Chris Statlander's really um, interesting character, and Tay Conti and a few others, but they're not anywhere as depth or a focus as they are on Impact or WWE. Which I'll rag on WWE all day. They at least do that right.
Yeah.
The next match with the Mysterios and Dolph Ziggler versus Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode, the Dirty Dogs, which is a name I hate with a passion.
Especially for those two.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. I would actually prefer to call them the Glorious Show-Offs, honestly.
Yeah, that would make more sense. My opinion on this match, I do like the feel good moment of having the father son tag team thing. Like, yeah, they want the moments. WWE's all about doing that.
Right.
But I don't necessarily like that Dominic will be out for half the match because he got attacked backstage, and he comes out, basically pulls what his dad does, comes back. Like, I'm not ragging on Ray at all. I've always respected Ray. But for them to come back and Ray constantly kick out of every single one of Ziggler and Roode's, signatures and finishers, and then Dominic come out halfway through, then him get beat up, tag Ray back in, him get beat up, tag, well, actually hit the 619, and Dom do the frog splash. I did the feel good moment. I just don't think it was necessary for them to attack Dominic before the match.
Yeah. It was kind of cheap, and it seems kind of weird because WWE has this weird duality with Mysterio, where they kind of play up his WCW character, where in WCW he was the guy that could take a beating and was a giant killer,
Yeah.
or they'll do the thing where Ray just gets absolutely dominant and does nothing and gets pinned. It seems like it's kind of like the Big Show, actually.
Yeah.
There's kind of no in between. Either they're a dominant talent, or they are just going to get steamrolled by whatever is the new coat of paint on a car, the new
Yeah.
toy.
Yeah. Like, think this. You remember Vladimir Kozlov
Yes.
and how in his debut he absolutely destroyed the Undertaker.
Yep.
I like look back on that and I'm like, how are you going to let someone who's supposed to be like unbeatable for at that point almost 20 years get destroyed by this newcomer and then do absolutely nothing with him?
They do the same thing. They've done that for so long, and that's why I'm not a big fan of squash matches. Some people kind of deserve squash matches, and I'll give you an example. I think Goldberg is one of the few people that kind of deserves to have squash matches because it sells who he is. Brock, depending on who it is, deserves to have squash matches. And if you looking at more active current people, I would say Lance Archer in AEW deserves squash matches. Brian Cage's wasn't bad. His more recent one was not bad at all.
Yeah.
But you have to use them sparingly. WWE likes to get momentum behind someone and do squashes. They did it with Vladimir Kozlov. They did it with Alexander Rusev. They
Right.
did it with Titus O'Neil. Um, I can't remember who's the guy that tag teamed with Vladimir. The Ezekiel Jackson. Ezekiel Jackson was another example. That they just he just was dominant and then did nothing.
Yeah.
Uh, it,
And like it kind of in a way, like he still had a little bit of name before he left, but they kind of did it with Ryback. Gave
they
him.
did, but the weird part with Ryback is they always drew comparisons to Goldberg just because of his
Yep.
appearance and everything else. Which to me, they should have just dove completely in. Yeah, he probably couldn't do the spear, and that's okay, but he could do the jackhammer.
Mhm.
And they should have leaned fully with that. Going back to Mysterio, one thing you gotta kind of have to give, because you said respect. You gotta give him credit. He's been wrestling for over 30 years in
Yeah.
a
And
very high fly manner,
yeah.
which I don't think many guys his size that do that style have lasted this long.
Yeah. I've always liked Ray ever since I started watching it. He's always been one of my favorites. And I've always had respect, and I always give him credit. He's been doing it for, like you said, like 30 years. And for him to still like be in as good shape as he is, especially for his age. And I think this is like the one of like other than when he first like started, I think this is probably the fastest he's like been in probably a few years.
Yeah,
Like right
yeah,
before he left.
he's keeping himself healthy. You can tell. I do think he's on his way out. I think he's phasing himself out, which is probably why WWE is investing heavily into Dominic, because what's more likely going to happen is Dominic is going to go off TV for a while and come back as a what they've already talked about is him being coming back as a masked wrestler under the name Prince Mysterio. So.
Which
Um,
I put the titles on them before Ray actually called it quits.
I think they mainly want to do it for the father son moment,
Yeah.
and whichever. I disagree with it, but whichever, do what they have to do. They want to have that in the record books. They can have it in the record books. It's their company, so it's just the method. It's the way they went about it that I disagree with. I don't like the taped together team of Dolph Ziggler and um, Bobby Roode. Bobby Roode. I followed him in Impact and TNA when he
Yeah.
was there. He should have been utilized closer to what he was utilized like in NXT. He has a spine buster that's on par with Triple H's. He is a really good talent overall. Was not good at promos in TNA in the earlier part, but he got better.
Oh yeah.
Um, they just it seems like they don't know what to do with him.
And it really does show because like in TNA, like especially towards this later part when he was probably when he was the it factor, that was I like that. And then when he came to